Flood Protection Secrets, the podcast to the protection against heavy rain and flooding by Dr. Flood, Andreas Klippe.
So the big challenge is, how can house owners like you and me get a flood-free home? How can business managers like you and me get a flood-free company? And how can public servants provide flood-free critical infrastructure and livable cities?
Flood Protection Secrets, the podcast by Dr. Flood, Andreas Klippe. This podcast is for foresighted and proactive people who do not want to shovel the muddy water out of their room while standing in the midst of the disaster.
Therefore, those who design and plan, the architects and engineers, need to construct such buildings and cities, and that even when the entire environment is completely flooded. That is a challenge, and this podcast will give the answers.
Flood Protection Secrets, the podcast by Dr. Flood, Andreas Klippe.
Welcome to another episode of Flood Protection Secrets. Let me take you to Doha in Qatar today, a city where modern architecture meets desert heat and where some of the Middle East's most respected institutions shape the future. Yeah, last week I told you a story about Canada, so that is the opposite. In Canada, of course, they also have nice summers, but it is very cold in wintertime, especially at the west coast. And today, once again, we go to the Middle East, and where the temperatures normally are much higher. And one of those institutions in Doha in Qatar is a highly respected university known across the region for its research, innovation, and international partnerships. And the campus is a showpiece, state-of-the-art laboratories, gleaming lecture halls, and landscaped grounds designed to impress visiting dignitaries and students alike. And I'm always impressed when I visit some universities there in the Middle East, and I'm shown around. Of course, I have a university background long ago when I stayed at the university as an assistant at the Institute for Process Engineering at the Technical University of Berlin, and then later as an assistant during my doctorate. And so I'm always very curious to see how have studies developed and what are the young people tell about it. And what I like most is when I see when I see the enthusiasm in their eyes when they speak about their work, and that is really fascinating, and it's interesting also to learn things. I'm always learning things because that is development doesn't stand still. Yeah, but I don't want to talk about that to you today, because that is this episode is about flood protection secrets, but for all its achievements in academics, there was one weakness at this university. It wasn't built to handle the kind of sudden, heavy rain that sometimes sweeps across the Gulf. When it rains in Doha, it's not a gentle drizzle. It's a short, sharp, overwhelming downpour. And a few years ago, one such storm turned parts of the campus into lakes. Access ramps to underground facilities became rushing streams. Lecture halls were closed, and sensitive equipment in lower floors was dangerously close to being lost. And the university leadership knew they couldn't let this happen again. Not to their campus, not to their reputation. Yeah, that's when they turned to Flood Control Asia, RS Corporation, for a solution that matched the prestige and standards of the institution. And we proposed these so often mentioned RS Demountable Flood Barriers. I described them in the previous episodes. If you're interested to listen to it again, especially this mini series with part 1 to part 8. We proposed these demountable flood barriers backed by proven German engineering. Why I focus on that? Because first of all, I am a German engineer. And and I remember very well how hard the studies were, and especially also the doctorate during these 5 years as a full-time assistant at the University of Verfahrenstechnik in German language, process engineering. Some say chemical engineering, but it was less chemical. Yeah, so we proposed these demountable flood barriers, and because they are backed by proven German engineering, 3 points. First point, designed and tested in Germany to meet the strictest international performance standards. Built with precision materials for decades of service, even under harsh conditions, and certified by independent authorities worldwide. So stakeholders could be confident in the system's reliability. What kind of word? The last point, certified by independent authorities worldwide, I explained in the last episode when I mentioned the world biggest insurance company for commercial and industrial buildings, FM Global, based in the USA. And that is the only insurance company with own tests, and they tested the barriers during 72 hours underwater. They checked the leaks. They checked them with kinetic impact. They by the way, that is often forgotten. Kinetic impact. The people think, oh, it's only a little bit of water, and then they put the water hose and they sprinkle on it, and that's the right word, I think so. And it's only getting wet, and then they think it's a water test. No, a water test is hydrostatic test and kinetic test. What about swimming elements? Have you ever seen these videos, the films in the news when flood events happen in the world? And this disaster, there are trees swimming, there are cars swimming, refrigerators, bicycles, whatever can swim, it will swim. And then it will hit the barriers, and the barriers must withstand it. That is kinetic impact. There's nothing to do with hydrostatic tests only. So this insurance company is testing that, and I mentioned that also at cold and high temperatures with torsion tests, everything what the mechanical laboratory can provide. That brings me back to university. All these tests in the laboratories. Perhaps some of you will remember the same as long as you studied technical study. The facilities director told me way back to Doha, we needed a protection system that works perfectly, looks professional, and is backed by certifications we can show to our board without hesitation. Very important thing, because the board must be included. If not, there are people sitting around, and when you present a flood protection project and the price, I will always say, oh, it's very expensive. That is the first thing what happens. Always very expensive. Because they think it is only a piece of metal sheet or wooden planks they put in front of a door. But flood protection is a part of the building. It is like installing an elevator. It's like installing a second floor or third floor, an additional floor. Because it must be watertight. It is not only a piece of metal, it is much more. That is an art. That is why you always need architects and engineers for it, depending what you're doing. But an engineer is always requested. And very often we are called to visit some the customers, and especially for maintenance. I told this story I think 2 weeks ago, when our head of engineering was called and should visit the place of 2 customers, and they said, "Oh, we need to repair the base seal of the middle support. It is damaged because one of our workers damaged it." And another customer, the homeowner, the lady said, "Oh, our yayas, these are the helpers in the house in the Philippines, the women, they are called yayas." And they misplaced, they stored the barriers in the wrong way. They put the barrier with the base seal at the bottom to the storage rack instead of putting the base seal at the top, that it is relaxed. It can breathe. No, it has nothing to do with breathing, but it should not be damaged. If not, you will have leaks. So all these things play a role. And of course, such a board, when it takes a decision, has no idea about all these things. They most of the people hear for the first time in their life, oh, there is flood protection. Okay, what is it? What is so complicated? It's only a piece of metal. How much is a square meter? It's a wrong question. And that shows that these people have not understood what they should do to secure their investment, because it's about the safety, not only about the people inside, it's the safety of the investment. When this university, in my example here, is getting flooded, the investment is gone, and most probably students will leave the university, professors will leave the university, and there's not enough money anymore. That is normally not the case in Doha, but the moment we talk about international managed university, there's always international money, and that is limited. At the end, they also want to make a benefit. They are not there for laughing. It's not for fun. So that is what they wanted to have, something that the board can take a decision without hesitation. So that is why it should look professional, and it should work, and it should be certified, etc. So we installed barriers at all critical entry points, vehicle ramps, service entrances, and key pedestrian walkways. We trained the maintenance team for fast deployment and integrated the system into the university's emergency protocols. And when the next heavy rain came, the city streets outside flooded again, but on campus, it was business as usual. Students kept attending classes, labs kept running experiments, and not a drop of flood water made it inside. Can I get a hand of applause, please? Thank you very much. I could not resist to push on this button. So, and here comes my golden nugget. That is a good transition to the golden nugget. And for you, when you hear German engineering, it is not just a slogan. It means precision, rigorous testing, and results you can trust. For this university in Doha, in Qatar, it meant protecting years of investment in facilities, equipment, and reputation, and keeping their academic mission on track, rain or shine. So if you manage a university, corporate campus, or any high-profile facility in a flood-prone region, connect with me. Let me become your Dr. Flood. I share real-world case studies, proven solutions, and strategies for protecting what matters most, and that is your safety. Add podcast in your request, so I know you are one of our listeners. The links you find below this podcast. And that's it for today's episode of Flood Protection Secrets. And please remember, the first flood is always too late. Protect now, and your next storm will be nothing more than background noise. Stay safe and flood free. I wish and hope for you that you make the right decisions when it comes to your personal flood protection. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to this podcast channel if you haven't already. Now it only remains for me to wish you a good day. Do something with it. Maybe until the next podcast episode. I would be very happy. See you then. As always, stay safe and flood free. Your Andreas Klippe and the whole Flood Experts team.
That's it again with a new episode of Flood Protection Secrets, the podcast by Dr. Flood, Andreas Klippe, German engineer, book author, and head of the Flood Experts. What can Dr. Flood, Andreas Klippe protect for you? Anytime? Worldwide? Contact us or just click through to www.thefloodexperts.de/bonus. Detailed engineering. German quality. Safe. Flood protection secrets. The secrets you'll want to unfold.
Don't forget, you're only one flood barrier away.
subscribe to the season, and you'll never be late for an episode.